Thanks for stopping by and checking out my videos. And if you want to learn more about my book, Love Like Snow in Florida on a Hot Summer's Day, go down to the description. I have the links to both my website and Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, where you can read it for free. Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And as promised, I am back with part 2 of all this late breaking news about the R. Kelly case, about the government wanting to introduce witnesses who have not been charged in this case. And you guys know that's what they did with Bill Cosby. They allowed women who had allegations against him to come in and testify, and that was the only way that they were able to get a conviction. And so in part 2, I am going to read the memorandum of law in support of the government's motion in Limine to admit certain uncharged acts. And so this is coming from the prosecutors with the Eastern District of New York. And as I told you in the previous video, this is very, very long. And so get your snacks, okay? Get you a drink, because this is going to take me a minute to get through this very long document. So let's go ahead and get started. They have a table of contents that I am not going to read, because I'll read the headers as we get into the information that they are providing. And so we're going to start with the preliminary statement. And remember, a lot of this information that I'm going to read to you all is information that was in the indictments that have come out. I believe there's been like the main indictment and maybe 2 superseding indictments. And so let's go ahead and get started. The preliminary statement: the government respectfully submits this memorandum in support of its motion in Limine to admit at trial evidence of certain acts by the defendant Robert Kelly. Specifically, the government seeks to admit evidence of uncharged abuse of minors, unlawful imprisonment, hush payments, use of physical and psychological harm to obtain favors and other services, threatening conduct, physical abuse, and bribery. As demonstrated below, the evidence of these acts is admissible as evidence of the charged racketeering offense. In addition, certain of the evidence of these other acts is directly relevant to and inextricably intertwined with the evidence of the charged crimes. In the alternative, evidence of these other acts is also admissible under Rules 404B and 413 of the Federal Rules of Evidence. And let's pull that up and see exactly what that states. Okay, so Rule 404, character evidence, other crimes, wrongs, or acts. A, character evidence. 1. Prohibited uses. Evidence of a person's character or character trait is not admissible to prove that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character or trait. 2. Exceptions for a defendant or victim in a criminal case. The following exceptions apply in a criminal case. A defendant may offer evidence of the defendant's pertinent trait, and if the evidence is admitted, the prosecutor may offer evidence to rebut it. B, subject to the limitations in Rule 412, a defendant may offer evidence of an alleged victim's pertinent trait, and if the evidence is admitted, the prosecutor may 1, offer evidence to rebut it, and 2, offer evidence of the defendant's same trait. And C, in a homicide case, the prosecutor may offer evidence of the alleged victim's trait of peacefulness to rebut evidence that the victim was the first aggressor. 3. Exceptions for a witness. Evidence of a witness's character may be admitted under Rules 607 and 608 and 609. B. Other crimes, wrongs, or acts. 1. Prohibited uses. Evidence of any other crime, wrong, or act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character. 2. Permitted uses. This evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. 3. Notice in a criminal case. In a criminal case, the prosecutor must A. Provide reasonable notice of any such evidence that the prosecutor intends to offer at trial so that the defendant has a fair opportunity to meet it. So that's what they're doing now in this motion. B. Articulate in the notice the permitted purpose for which the prosecutor intends to offer the evidence and the reasoning that supports the purpose. And C. Do so in writing before trial or in any form during trial if the court, for good cause, excuses lack of pretrial notice. And so basically, that's what the law says, that they can bring in this information and what rules apply to doing so. So let's go back here. And it says, Statement of Facts. On June 20th, 2019, a grand jury in the Eastern District of New York returned a 5-count indictment charging the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, with racketeering in violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 1962C, among other crimes. On July 10, 2019, the Eastern District of New York grand jury returned a superseding indictment, adding a forfeiture allegation. On December 5, 2019, the Eastern District of New York grand jury returned a superseding indictment, adding an additional predicate racketeering act to the racketeering offense. On March 12, 2020, the Eastern District of New York grand jury returned a third superseding indictment, removing one predicate racketeering act, former Racketeering Act 8, adding 3 other racketeering acts, and adding 4 substantive counts. Count 1 of the indictment, charged racketeering, alleges an enterprise consisting of the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, and individuals who served as managers, bodyguards, drivers, personal assistants, and runners for Kelly, as well as members of Kelly's entourage, the enterprise. The indictment further alleges that the enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the enterprise, and that the enterprise engaged in and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. The purposes of the enterprise was to promote R. Kelly's music and the R. Kelly brand, to recruit women and girls to engage in illegal activity with Kelly, and to produce pornography, including CP. By promoting R. Kelly's music and the R. Kelly brand, the members of the enterprise expected to receive financial opportunities and personal benefits, including increased power and status within the enterprise. And we know that that is definitely not true. So in connection with the enterprise, Kelly and the other members of the enterprise traveled throughout the United States and abroad to perform at concert venues, to promote the R. Kelly brand, and to recruit women to engage in illegal activity with Kelly. When Kelly attended and performed at concerts and other events, Kelly and or members of the enterprise on Kelly's behalf invited women backstage and to other events following Kelly's live performances. These women were often offered wristbands that signified that they were authorized to attend an event. There, Kelly relied upon members of the enterprise to ensure that only those authorized to attend were allowed at the event, and to manage the flow of women who were directly interacting with Kelly. When Kelly identified a woman who he wished to see again, he either gave his contact information to the woman or obtained her contact information or relied upon members of the enterprise to do so. Following these events, Kelly communicated with certain of these women and girls by telephone, including through the use of traditional telephone calls, text messages, iMessages, and FaceTime. As part of this communication, Kelly often requested that the women and provide him with photographs of themselves. Kelly and other members of the enterprise also arranged for the women to travel to see Kelly on occasion, including at concerts throughout the United States and related events. To facilitate their travel, Kelly directed the women to contact a member of the enterprise who then arranged travel for the women. When the women arrived at the lodging, which was typically selected by a member of the enterprise, a member of the enterprise usually provided them with instructions. In addition, members of the enterprise took steps to ensure that the women did not interact with other women whom Kelly planned to see. Members of the enterprise then arranged for the women to attend his concert and positioned them such that Kelly could see them during his concerts. Please tell me what is illegal about this. Okay, groupies are going to be groupies, and they show up so that they can get that special treatment, so that they can be with the artist, so that they can spend some time with them, and in most cases hopefully sleep with the artist. Is that wrong? I mean, that's how it has been since the beginning of time. Not sure why this is considered racketeering. And then I also want to tell you guys that I am omitting certain words in this document, but you all that have been following the case, I'm sure you pretty much know what those words are. So it says, Kelly promulgated numerous rules that many of his partners were required to follow, including the following. The women were not permitted to leave their room without receiving permission from Kelly, including to eat or go to the bathroom. And if they sat there and needed to go to the bathroom and didn't go, then they were stupid to begin with. So if you showed up at his concert and you were selected to go to the hotel so you could get screwed, and so you don't know him, right? You don't know anything about him. You just know he's a superstar and you want to get with him. How did he brainwash you to sit your dumb butt in the room and not go to the bathroom when you didn't even know the man at this point? He was just somebody that, he was a performer that you wanted to get to know. So how were you brainwashed when you hadn't even met him yet? So the women were required to wear baggy clothing when they were not accompanying Kelly to an event or unless otherwise instructed by Kelly. If you didn't want to wear baggy clothes, then you should have got your clothes that you wanted to wear, your hooker clothes that you probably wore to the concert to meet him, and got on down the road and went and found somebody who didn't want you to follow their rules. So the women were not permitted to look at other men and instead were told to keep their heads down. Once again, that was a choice. You chose to follow, and do those commands if those were actually the commands. So the women were required to call Kelly daddy. Once again, a lot of people call a man daddy. Nothing criminal about that. Among the means and methods by which Kelly and his associates participated in the conduct of the affairs of the enterprise were the following: committing, attempting, and aiding and abetting the commission of crimes and conspiring to commit crimes, included but not limited to engaging in activity with people under 18, engaging in and facilitating activity without disclosing STDs Kelly had contracted, producing CP, bribery, extortion, coercion, and blackmail, demanding absolute commitment to Kelly and not tolerating dissent, obtaining sensitive information about partners and members and associates of the enterprise to maintain control over them. Once again, these are grown people that, I guess, was he waving like a coin in front of their face and hypnotizing them? It just didn't seem to me like this one man had control over all these people and was able, to do all these things that they're alleging. So creating embarrassing and degrading videos of partners to maintain control over them. Once again, they had to participate in the videos. They had free will to say no and leave. Recruiting and grooming partners for Kelly, and isolating women from friends and family and making them dependent on Kelly for their financial well-being. How do you make somebody dependent upon you for financial well-being when, like, if he had all these women, how did he make them become financially dependent upon them if they weren't there looking for his money, for his finances, and to live a certain lifestyle to begin with? Then he couldn't have made them do anything. So they were there by choice. And as Dominique stated, that she didn't want to work, and so she had to put up with whatever she had to put up with in order to live a lifestyle where she didn't have to go to work. And so that's pretty much what happened with all the rest of them. So 1, alleged racketeering acts. The indictment alleges racketeering acts related to 6 women identified as Jane Doe number 1 through Jane Doe number 6 in the indictment. The alleged conduct is described below. A, bribery related to Jane Doe number 1, who we know is the late singer Aaliyah. Not sure why they are bringing her into this mess, but they have chosen to do so. Racketeering Act 1 alleges that Kelly, together with others, engaged in bribery in violation of Illinois law. In or about 1994, Kelly caused an enterprise member to pay $500 to get a state employee to create a state identification card for Jane Doe number 1, who was then 15 years old, so that Kelly and Jane Doe number 1 could get married, and Jane Doe number 1 could not be forced to testify against him, giving the spousal privilege. Okay, the issue I have with this bribery charge is, number 1, Demetrius Smith has already stated on video that it was his idea to go and get this marriage certificate, right? It was his idea. So how can you say that R. Kelly had this member of the alleged enterprise to go and do this when that member has already stated he was the mastermind behind it? And then they say that he married her so that she couldn't testify against him. This happened in 1994. What was he going to be charged? I mean, he wasn't facing any charges. So what was he afraid of that she would testify against him in? Like, it's just stupid. Doesn't make any sense. So it says records from Cook County in Illinois show that on August 30th, 1994, an application was granted for Kelly and Jane Doe number 1 to be married, and that they were in fact married on August 31st, 1994. The marriage application and record, marriage license, and certification of marriage all state that Jane Doe number 1 was 18 at the time, when in fact she was 15 years old. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about Jane Doe number 1. And do you guys not find it odd that in all these years that we have never found out who this alleged clerk at the courthouse was? We know they had a name for a minister who allegedly performed this ceremony, right? But none of his church members or nobody, or was he the deacon at the church? He was something with the church, child. But nobody has ever come forward, like, to talk about this marriage. Like, who was this employee? Like, I used to work for the city, okay, and I know how people gossip and how people talk about other people. And so I just find it very odd that in all these years, nobody has come forward to say who this employee was, name the employee, say, yeah, I remember when they came into the courthouse, I saw them in the courtroom or in the room where they do the little service or whatever, or get the documents or whatever the hell was going on. But nobody has come forward. And then Where did the wedding take place at? Was there no witnesses? Because was Demetrius the only witness there? I just find it odd that nobody has come forward with a name of who the clerk was. And then the clerk should have been in trouble, once the story broke that this alleged marriage had took place. What happened with the clerk? Why didn't the clerk come forward and say either, yeah, I did it, or, the clerk's office come forward and say, we fired this individual, or this individual has been suspended, or this individual has been charged with, giving this marriage certificate knowing that this person was underage. It's like none of that has ever happened. And that's always been my issue with this whole Aaliyah story. So B, Jane Doe number 2. Racketeering Act 2 alleges that Kelly, together with others, enticed and coerced Jane Doe number 2, a minor, to engage in conduct and then visually record such conduct. The defendant met Jane Doe number 2 in or about 1999 after another member of the enterprise approached her at a fast food restaurant and informed her the defendant wished to speak with her. Thereafter, while Jane Doe number 2 was a minor under the age of 18, the defendant filmed their actions on multiple occasions, thereby creating CP using materials that had been mailed, shipped, and transported in interstate and foreign commerce. Now, I did a video recently about these Jane Does where they want to keep them anonymous and let them use fake names or only go by their first names. And I said in the video that I often thought that Jane Doe number 2 was Heather Williams. But then I also typed on the video itself, I put a message on the video that I had forgotten that Jane Doe number 2 is actually Patrice Jones, because it was her prom night and they were at the Rock and Roll McDonald's, and that is where they met at allegedly, and all of this transpired. But I don't understand what they're saying about mailed, shipped, transported in interstate and foreign commerce, because they keep accusing him of all that. And so once again, do we have the videos in possession? Are they going to show these videos at the trial that they keep claiming that he was rolling around with on his possession? So Jane Doe number 3, Racketeering Acts 3 and 4 allege that Kelly, together with others, unlawfully imprisoned and assaulted Jane Doe number 3 without consent in or about and between 2003 and 2004. Jane Doe number 3 met him at a mall outside the state of Illinois when she was in her early 20s and working as a radio station intern. The defendant thereafter invited her to travel to Chicago, Illinois, purportedly to conduct an interview for him. Following her arrival in Chicago, she claims that she was directed to a recording studio. Once there, she claims that she was escorted to a room within the studio by one of the defendant's associates, who also took and searched her suitcase. Later, while in the room, another associate made a copy of Jane Doe number 3's driver's license, directed her to sign what she believed to be a non-disclosure agreement, and advised her not to talk to anyone and to keep her head down. Jane Doe number 3 ultimately spent approximately 3 days in the room, which was locked without sustenance. After a member of the enterprise provided her with food and a drink, she became tired and dizzy. She woke up sometime thereafter to the defendant with her in the bedroom in circumstances made it apparent that he had assaulted her while she was unconscious. Now, with Jane Doe number 3, who I have no clue who this is, she said that she signed a document that she believed to be a non-disclosure agreement. Therefore, she had to have read the non-disclosure, right? And normally when celebrities have women sign non-disclosures, it states in there what you are agreeing to do, what you are about to do, and you promise not to tell nobody, right? So why did she sign the non-disclosure if it had details in there that was saying this is what is about to happen? And so do they have the non-disclosure agreement? Do they have a copy of it so that they know what was actually in the document? Do they have, what is the evidence from this person that they have to connect him to this crime or to state that this happened? And how does she know that, he was in the room? What were the circumstances that made it apparent to her that something had happened between the two of them if she was unconscious? Do you guys get what I'm saying? And so it seems like a lot of this is circumstantial evidence that they are putting out here. So Jane Doe number 4, who we know is what's that crazy? Geronda Pace. Okay, so racketeering acts 5 through 7 allege that Kelly, together with others, enticed Jane Doe number 4, a minor, to engage in illegal activity, made a visual recording of the activity, and used force and threats of force to obtain services from the person. Now, her story seems to continue to grow by the day. In or about May 2009, when Jane Doe was underage and the defendant was in his early 40s, the defendant began a relationship with Jane Doe in violation of Illinois law, which ultimately lasted for a period of months. During that time period, on multiple occasions, the defendant produced explicit photographs and videos of her engaging in acts in contact with the defendant and others at his discretion, and this story seems to be growing as well. In the course of their relationship, the defendant also engaged in a scheme, plan, and pattern intended to cause Jane Doe number 4 to believe that if she did not perform certain acts on him and others at his discretion, she or her family members would suffer serious harm. Okay, Geronda. The defendant engaged in a pattern of both physical and psychological abuse when Jane Doe number 4 disobeyed his directives, including slapping, choking, and isolating her in rooms for days at a time with no access to food, which caused Jane Doe to believe such punishments would occur if she did not acquiesce and perform these acts she did not want to perform. Now, y'all, how a 16-year-old locked up with a grown man for days at a time and her mama wasn't looking for her? Where were her parents? Where was her family? Was she still enrolled in high school? Was she not going to class? Did the school not call and say Geronda hasn't been here? It was the same thing with that trial. How did she attend that entire trial and the school didn't call the mama and say she's not in school? None of the neighbors, the mother, nobody saw her on the news. Nobody saw her on the cover of the Chicago Sun-Times. All of this went on during the trial. Then a whole year later, she's still out here shucking and jiving and claiming that, she's with R. Kelly, and nobody knew. Nobody thought anything was strange or odd about this girl just disappearing for days at a time. Nobody came looking for her or nothing. So in addition, the defendant allegedly caused her to write and sign letters and other documents containing false information that, if released, could cause reputational harm to both her and her close family members as an additional means to exert control over her. Well, from all accounts, Geronda, of your stories, your family wasn't worth a damn to begin with, because they obviously didn't know where you were at and what you were doing and where you were going and who you were going there with. So to me, if he had went out and told somebody, it wouldn't have harmed them in the least bit, because they have already shown themselves not to be of good character. So in January 2010, Geronda left Kelly and retained a lawyer, an individual whose identity is known to the government, to represent her. And so we already know that's Susan Loggins, right? Loggins. On behalf of Geronda, lawyer one thereafter negotiated a financial settlement with Kelly, in exchange for which she agreed to not further discuss her relationship with Kelly. Okay, Jane Doe number 5, who we know is Ariel Clary. Racketeering Acts 8 through 11 alleged that Kelly, together with others, enticed her, a minor, to engage in illegal activity, made a visual recording of such activity, and used force and threats of force to obtain services from her. Counts 2 through 5 charge the defendant with standalone crimes involving certain of that conduct as to Ariel. In or about 2015, Ariel, an aspiring music artist, met the defendant after attending one of his concerts. Thereafter, at the defendant's suggestion, she began traveling on a consistent basis with the defendant while he was on tour. At the defendant's direction, purportedly to learn about the music business, including to various locations in California while she was under the age of 18. In or about April and May 2015, while in California, the defendant engaged in activity with Ariel without divulging to her that he had contracted an infectious disease, namely herpes. Now, we know that this is all a lie, right? Okay. About this May, because wasn't the concert in April? And then her mother bought her the plane ticket to go to California. And that was the same time that Ariel flew to California. Jocelyn was in California also, because this was the San Diego Jazz Fest or something. And that's the picture with Jocelyn and her mom and the younger sister, or the middle sister, Jay. And they were posing with R. Kelly. So now this is the same trip to California that they were all at the same time. And so I believe that Ariel really is lying about when this encounter took place. And then if you remember from Ariel's Twitter account from where she was a teenager, it was like June when she was talking about going to Chicago and that she was going to be working with R. Kelly in Chicago and how excited she was. And remember, the older sister was with Ariel. And so why would the sister allow Ariel to be alone with R. Kelly to do anything with him? You know what I'm saying? Outside of being in the studio, being on the tour bus. So where was the sister when all this shucking and jiving was taking place that Ariel is now claiming that, oh, this happened in April and May instead of the following year? You guys get what I'm saying? How these stories are changing up on us by the second. And so it says in October 2015, while Ariel was still a minor, he persuaded, induced, and coerced her to travel to California, I guess, to once again engage in some behavior with the defendant in violation of California law. As with Geronda, the defendant engaged in a pattern of both physical and psychological abuse when Jane Doe number 5, Ariel, disobeyed his directives. And then they basically started talking about all that nonsense that she had in that Sun Times article where he beat her with a size 12 Air Force One. So then we move down to Faith, Jane Doe number 6. Racketeering Acts 12 through 14 alleged that Kelly, together with others, enticed Jane Doe number 6 to engage in illegal activity and use force and threats of force to obtain services from her. Now, for him to obtain those services, she had to have been offering them services, right? I mean, I'm just saying. Count 6 through 9 charged the defendant with standalone crimes involving certain of that conduct as to Jane Doe number 6. Jane Doe number 6 met the defendant following a concert that she attended when she was 19, at which time the defendant provided her with his telephone number. Thereafter, the two communicated by telephone. In May 2017, at the defendant's direction, she contacted another member of the enterprise, one of the defendant's assistants, to arrange travel to and accommodations in New York to attend a concert in Long Island, New York. Following the concert, she returned to her hotel room. In the early morning hours, the defendant unexpectedly arrived at her room and loudly announced his presence. Ultimately, at the defendant's direction, the encounter became sexual in nature and the two engaged in intercourse. The defendant did not use a condom. Prior to the intercourse, the defendant did not divulge that he had contracted herpes, an infectious venereal disease, in violation of New York law. Notably, during the encounter in the hotel room, the defendant told Jane Doe number 6 in sum and substance that if she was really underage, she could tell him, suggesting he would have preferred for Jane Doe to be younger. Okay, whatever, Faith. Thereafter, the defendant arranged and paid for Jane Doe number 6 to travel to various locations throughout the United States to see him, including in January 2018 to Los Angeles, California. During the trip, Jane Doe number 6 went to a recording studio in Los Angeles to see the defendant. Once at the studio, Jane Doe 6 waited for many hours in a room without sustenance for the defendant to arrive. After briefly seeing him, the defendant did not show up again until the following day. After he arrived the following day, the defendant took Jane Doe number 6 into a smaller area room and instructed Jane Doe number 6 to take off her clothes. Jane Doe number 6 noticed a weapon in the room, which the defendant moved to a piece of furniture nearby. He then proceeded to ask her a series of questions, warning her there would be consequences if she lied. Given the surrounding circumstances, Jane Doe number 6 believed she was not free to leave the room. Thereafter, the defendant directed Jane Doe number 6 to give him some head. When agents executed a search warrant at the defendant's residence on July 11, 2019, they found a holster and ammunition, but they ain't find no gun, I guess. So the defendant arranged... Oh my God, this is so stupid. Okay, the defendant arranged for Jane Doe number 6 to travel a final time to see him in February 2018 in New York City. While in New York, the defendant engaged in activity with Jane Doe number 6, again without divulging to her that he had contracted an infectious disease in violation of New York law. Jane Doe number 6 stopped seeing the defendant following this trip and ultimately learned that she had contracted an infectious venereal disease during the course of her relationship with the defendant. Girl, the medical records confirmed that the defendant had an infectious venereal disease during the course of his sexual activity with Jane Doe number 6. But what did Jane Doe number 6 record show? Okay, did it show that she was not a virgin and that very well could have already had said STD? So 2, overview of the government's evidence of the defendant's other acts. A, abuse of Jane Doe number 1. And guys, this is pretty much just repeating what I've already read to you. They're just rewording how they're putting it. So then so the first part was talking about Aaliyah again and just rewording those charges. But then B, it says abuse of Jane Doe number 7, a minor. So now they're adding on people, and these are people in which he has not faced any charges. It says in or about 1991, when she was approximately 15, Jane Doe number 7, an individual whose identity is known to the government, met Kelly at his apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Jane Doe number 7 had been invited by a female acquaintance who was also a minor to come to Kelly's apartment with her. 2 other minor females also came to the apartment with them. While at the apartment, Kelly initiated and engaged in intercourse with Jane Doe number 7. Jane Doe number 7 also saw Kelly engaged in encounters with other people when she went to his apartment or who she went to the apartment with. Jane Doe number 7 later became employed by Kelly as, among other things, a backup dancer. During the course of her time with Kelly, Jane Doe number 7 observed Kelly engaged in contact with Jane Doe number 1, a minor. Now, wasn't this that Cunningham girl who claimed that she saw them on the back of the bus? Is that who this is? Okay, so once again, how do you prove that this stuff that these people are saying is actually true? So C, abuse of Jane Doe number 8, a minor. So in or about September 1994, Jane Doe number 8, a 17-year-old and an individual with identity, whose identity is known to the government, attended a concert in Florida where Kelly performed. After the concert, members of the enterprise directed Jane Doe number 8 and friend of hers to go backstage to meet Kelly, and she obtained his autograph. While she was backstage, Kelly, who was not wearing a condom, penetrated her with his wee-wee in violation of Florida law. A pamphlet signed by Kelly containing a reference to Jane Doe number 8 and a room number corroborates Jane Doe number 8's encounter with Kelly. Now, is that the Martinez chick? I think that's who that is. So D, Jane Doe number 9, in or about 1995, Kelly met Jane Doe number 9, 17, an individual whose identity known to the government at a Florida mall, and thereafter commenced a relationship with her. Or is this number 9? Let's see, is number 8? Okay, I'm trying to think who number 8. I know who that is, but once again, I have to go back to my list of all these people from surviving R. Kelly. I think this person here is the Lynette, or whatever her name is, Martinez chick, because I think they met at the mall down in Miami. And then on this occasion, she laughed at a joke by one of Kelly's associates, and Kelly immediately summoned her outside and slapped her across the face for having done so. During their relationship, she contracted herpes and disclosed her diagnosis to Kelly, who did not admit to having herpes. At the time of her diagnosis, Jane Doe number 9 was only active with him. How do we know this to be true? Because she say so. And once again, where were her parents, and why was he down in Miami long enough to have a so-called relationship with this person? Where was Andrea doing all this time? So Jane Doe number 10, in or about July 2001, Jane Doe number 10, an individual whose identity is known to the government, blah, 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 attended a concert. Prior to the concert, a member of the enterprise gave her and her friend backstage passes so they could meet Kelly following the concert. After the concert, number 10 and her friend met Kelly backstage and took a photo with him. As they were leaving, another member of the enterprise told Jane Doe number 10 that Kelly wanted to see her again and provided her with a piece of paper with Kelly's cell phone number and his hotel room number on it, and advised her to call the number in an hour. Thereafter, she called the number and Kelly invited her to come to his room. She subsequently went to the room with her friend. When they arrived, Kelly was there with multiple other people. Kelly subsequently took her to the bathroom, closed the door, and immediately exposed himself, signaling that he wanted her to give him some head, which she did. Okay, once again, where is the coercion? Like, these sound like willing participants to me. And did he ask them how old they were? Did they provide identification? Did they tell him, like, if all of this is actually true? Did she say, now, wait a minute now, I'm only this age? And once again, where were her parents when she was at this concert, where she was going to hotels when she should have been home? Okay, let's see. Thereafter, Jane Doe number 10 communicated with Kelly by phone, and through another member of the enterprise, Kelly made arrangements and paid for her to travel to Chicago to see him. Where were her parents? Like, where did they think she was going? In or about December 2001, while she was 16, she traveled to Chicago to Kelly's recording studio. Upon her arrival, an employee directed her to an office where Kelly was. Kelly immediately told her to pull down her pants and turn around. She did not initially comply with his directions. In response, Kelly became angry and yelled at her. She felt intimidated and did as he directed. Thereafter, he asked her for her ID and she showed it to him. Kelly thereafter directed her to give him some more head, which she did. In April 2003, when she was no longer a minor, she saw him again and engaged in sex again. So, child, how are you a victim, girl? In or about 2004, based on information she received from another individual, she became concerned that Kelly may have videotaped their encounter in his hotel room when she was underage, and that such a videotape had been disseminated. In an effort to learn whether such a videotape existed, Jane Doe number 10 contacted lawyer number 1, Suzanne, what's that woman name? Loggins. Contacted her, who had represented individuals who had sued Kelly previously. Thereafter, Jane Doe number 10 engaged the services of lawyer number 1. Kelly ultimately reached a financial settlement with her in which he paid a substantial sum to her and her lawyer. The settlement agreement included a non-disclosure provision which purportedly would prevent Jane Doe number 10 from reporting Kelly's conduct to law enforcement. Well, it seems to me like her and her parents should have taken her to law enforcement to start with instead of trying to seek a settlement. So we move on to number 11 and number 12 and some STDs that they are alleging. So Jane Doe number 11, an individual whose identity is known to the government, met Kelly when she was an adult and had a consensual relationship with Kelly beginning in 2001. Prior to engaging in activity with Kelly, Jane Doe number 11 tried to ask Kelly whether he had any STDs, and he demurred. Kelly did not wear a condom while engaging in activity with number 11. Okay, if you were smart enough to ask this person if they wore a condom and you weren't sure about their response, why would you then proceed to have unprotected sex with that individual? So Jane Doe number 11 later learned that she had contracted herpes and believed she had contracted it from Kelly. Now, we know that none of these girls are virgins, right? Like, based on this information, they just too easily went to these hotel rooms, went and had sex with this man, allegedly. So they were all sexually active. So how are they going to prove that he gave them STDs? And so it says that in or about 2003, so we done went from 2001 to 2003, she retained the Loggins lady to sue him for her and reached a $250,000 settlement with Kelly. Jane Doe number 11 advised that her friend, Jane Doe number 12, who is now deceased, also reached a $250,000 settlement with Kelly based on a similar claim as part of the settlement. Oh, Lord. Jane Doe, number 11, believed that she was not permitted to disclose to anyone, including law enforcement, her claims about Kelly. So, child, they just got folks coming at the woodwork. So then, Jane Doe, number 13. In March 2006, he met Jane Doe, number 13, who claimed she was 15. And an individual whose identity is known to the government at a concert and arranged to meet her the following day. Now, he sure have a lot of time to be meeting people, because most entertainers, when they are traveling, they get up and get back on the road. And in R. Kelly's case, he had them tour buses, so it seemed like he would have been getting on his tour bus and going on to his next stop. But he seemed to be having a whole lot of time to be milling about with these people that he just met, going to malls and meeting up the following day and all this stuff, right? So now Jane Doe number 13 claimed that she was a virgin, but she was willing to give it up to him. Okay, so she's claimed that she was a virgin and thereafter commenced a relationship with her. and Kelly arranged for a member of the Enterprise, one of his bus drivers, to drive her several hours within Florida and otherwise arranged for her air travel to Kelly's residence in Chicago, Illinois. Where were her parents? Where did her parents think she was going? Like, how did she get on the airplane and fly to Chicago from Florida and her parents didn't know where she was going or who she was going to meet? So it says telephone records, emails, and bank records corroborate Kelly's relationship with Jane Doe number 13, beginning when she was 15. Then we got abuse Jane Doe number 1, a minor. I think they may have missed the number there. No, it says number 1. In or about December 2006. I think they done got confused on their Jane Does because I thought, John Doe. I'm sorry, y'all. Please forgive me. I forgot to tell you that they done found some boys that they claim he done messed with. So he met John Doe, number 1, a 17-year-old boy and an individual whose identity is known to the government, at a local McDonald's and invited him to attend a party at his residence in Chicago. John Doe, number 1, along with his mother and stepfather, attended the party. When Kelly saw John Doe number 1 with his family members, Kelly advised him to come without them to the next gathering. Thereafter, Kelly invited John Doe number 1 into his studio under the guise of helping and mentoring John Doe number 1 with his musical aspirations. Kelly also asked John Doe number 1 what he was willing to do to succeed in the music business and clarified that he wanted John Doe number 1 to engage in contact with him. With that backdrop, Kelly then engaged in contact with John Doe number 1 in violation of Illinois law. John Doe number 1 thereafter introduced Kelly to, among others, John Doe number 2. Y'all know. Oh, Jesus. Okay. A close friend who was then 16 or 17 and whose identity is known to the government, and Kelly sought to establish a relationship with John Doe number 2. Several years later, Kelly started a relationship with John Doe number 2 and required his girlfriends, including Ariel, to have sex with John Doe number 2 upon his command and often filmed those encounters. Kelly sometimes paid John Doe number 2 after encounters with him. Kelly also directed John Doe number 1 and others to engage in contact with each other and film those encounters. Telephone records corroborate Kelly's relationship with John Doe number 1 and John Doe number 2, beginning when both were 17. John Doe number 1 also introduced Kelly to girlfriends of John Doe number 1. Okay, child, y'all just doing too damn much. How do phone records corroborate a relationship? All the phone record, unless there was some texting going on, like do they have copies of text messages where, he admitted to doing this? It's going to be interesting to see. So it says 1, unlawful imprisonment of Jane Doe number 14. In 2008, Kelly met Jane Doe number 14, a woman in her 20s, whose identity is known to the government, and arranged for her travel to Kelly's residence in Chicago, Illinois, where they began a relationship. During her last trip to Chicago to see Kelly, she was left in a room for a long period of time and she became worried. She told a member of the Enterprise, an individual on Kelly's security team, that she wanted to leave, and that individual said they would figure it out, but did not allow her to leave just then. The following morning, she overheard Kelly yelling and sounds of physical assault. Jane Doe number 14 again contacted Kelly's security team, but this time said that she was going to call the police if not permitted to leave. Only then did a member of Kelly's security team come to the room where she was staying, escort her out of the room, and take her to the airport. Now, if she had a phone to be calling people, why she didn't just call 911 and get on up out of there? Or better yet, let's see, where was she at? Was she at a hotel? Where was this child claim? Oh, she was at the residence. But you had a phone, but you couldn't call the police to get up out of there. Okay. So threats towards employee number 1 and hush payments towards Jane Doe number 15. In 2009, Kelly met Jane Doe number 15, an aspiring singer who was 17 years old and whose identity is known to the government, through a talent manager who years later became an employee of Kelly, identified herein as employee number 1. Kelly paid for Jane Doe 15's lodging at a hotel nearby his residence in Olympia Fields, Illinois, purportedly so that Kelly could mentor and assist her with her music career, and Jane Doe number 15 could use the studio at his residence to record music. Jane Doe number 15 ceased her relationship with Kelly when she was 18 years old, went to the hospital where she confided to a nurse that Kelly had abused her, filed a police report, and retained the same attorney to represent her in a possible lawsuit against Kelly. Kelly thereafter told employee number 1 in sum and substance that Jane Doe number 15 was attempting to sue Kelly for engaging in a relationship with her, that employee number 1 needed to decide whether she was on Team Kelly or Team Jane Doe number 15, and the employee number 1, who was based in Atlanta at the time, needed to travel to Chicago immediately at Kelly's direction. And you guys, I can't think of who this person is right off the bat, but I have talked about this in one of my earlier videos, and if I can go back and remember who this person is, I will post it in the comments. So it says, at Kelly's direction, employee number 1 traveled to Chicago, where Kelly told employee number 1, in substance, you have to be careful in these situations because people end up going missing. A comment employee number 1 construed as a threat to her and her family. Shortly thereafter, a member of the enterprise, one of Kelly's employees, told employee number 1 that she had to go to downtown Chicago with him, but did not provide any information regarding precisely where they were going or for what purpose. Upon their arrival in downtown Chicago, employee number 1 was dropped off at Kelly's lawyer's office, where the lawyer presented her with a prepared typewritten affidavit to sign. Employee number 1 did not read the affidavit in full, but saw that it said, inter alia, and in substance, that she did not see Kelly have relationships with Jane Doe number 15, provide Jane Doe 15 with alcohol, or slap Jane Doe 15. Employee number 1 reported that she signed the affidavit without carefully reading it because she feared that harm would come to her or her family if she did not. Bank records show that Kelly paid lawyer 1, and that lawyer 1 then paid nearly $400,000 to Jane Doe number 15. And Jane Doe 15 has repeatedly declined to meet with law enforcement. Excuse me. And I think whoever this employee is, she was one of the people that was on the reel. And remember when they were going around doing those interviews, and this was before Surviving R. Kelly had even been approved for production. Back in 2017, they were traveling, going on the Real and other talk shows. And then it was like a year later when they got the approval for Surviving R. Kelly. So K, physical and psychological abuse of Jane Doe 16 and Jane Doe 17. In or about 2001, Kelly met Jane Doe number 16, who was then 16 or 17 and whose identity is known to the government, and commenced a multi-year relationship with Jane Doe number 16. In or about May 2009, Kelly met Jane Doe 17, who was then 17 and whose identity is known to the government, and commenced a multi-year relationship. Both women remained with Kelly until at least in or about 2017. So this sounds like One of them is Dominique Gardner, because remember, she was with him for like almost 9 years. Okay, and so it says Kelly regularly spanked Jane Doe number 16 and Jane Doe number 17 when he perceived that they had violated one of his rules. He also directed Jane Doe 16 and 17 to write numerous letters containing falsehoods and embarrassing allegations of Kelly to use at his discretion if and when the need arose. In addition, witnesses saw Kelly subject Jane Doe number 17 to particularly extreme punishment, which included loss of her cellular telephone, violent assaults, and deprivation of food and the ability to leave her room. Jane Doe number 16 and 17 also engaged in sex with Kelly, and Jane Doe number 2, an individual otherwise unknown to either of them at Kelly's direction, which interactions were often filmed. The government recovered various letters written by Jane Doe number 16 and Jane Doe number 17, including certain ones that appeared to contain falsehoods. L. Physical and psychological abuse of Jane Doe 18. In or about 2016, Jane Doe number 18, whose identity is known to the government, met Kelly at one of his concerts when she was approximately 20 years old, after one of Kelly's associates approached her and told Jane Doe number 18 that Kelly wanted to meet her. In or about 2016, Jane Doe number 18 started a relationship with Kelly. Kelly regularly punished Jane Doe number 18 in various ways when she violated his rules. For example, Kelly violently spanked, hit, and kicked Jane Doe number 18 on multiple occasions. At times, Kelly also instructed Jane Doe 18 to text Kelly that she liked being spanked after administering the spankings as punishment. In addition to the spankings, Kelly ordered Jane Doe number 18 to walk back and forth in high heels for long stretches of time, repeating as she walked what he deemed she had done wrong as punishment. At a concert in November 2017, Kelly became enraged with Jane Doe number 18 because he suspected she had been communicating with another man, and grabbed Jane Doe number 18 and broke her necklace, cutting her neck. Now, isn't this the Hallie girl? The Hallie Calhoun chick? Kelly then made her go back to the hotel where she was staying and write a note stating that she had attacked Kelly. Kelly dictated to her what he wanted her to write in the note. When she finished the note, Kelly directed Jane Doe number 18 to give him the note for his future use. And then I'm thinking the other person might be Jocelyn, maybe. On other occasions, Kelly slapped Jane Doe number 18 because he believed she was looking at or talking to other men in violation of his rules. In addition, during their relationship, Jane Doe number 18 signed a non-disclosure agreement and, at Kelly's discretion, wrote letters in which she wrote embarrassing falsehoods and witnessed others write similar letters. The government recovered various letters written by Jane Doe number 18, including certain ones that contained falsehoods which were dictated to her by Kelly so that he could use the letters against her at a later date. Kelly also directed Jane Doe number 18 to make recordings of herself engaged in compromising and disparaging acts and making certain statements at his instruction, and to provide those recordings to him. The contents of those recordings, which would cause Jane Doe number 18 embarrassment and reputational harm if disseminated to others, were thus available for Kelly's use at any time at his choosing, at Kelly's discretion. Jane Doe number 18 also engaged in acts with Kelly and others, including Jane Doe number 5 and Jane Doe number 2, and individuals otherwise unknown to her, which Kelly regularly recorded. Okay, threats towards Jane Doe number 6 and others. In or about the fall of 2018, continuing through January 2020, Kelly and other members of the enterprise, including Don Russell, Russell's mother, and an individual working on Kelly's behalf, used coercive tactics to attempt to convince Jane Doe number 6 to abandon a civil lawsuit she had filed against Kelly and to stop speaking publicly about Kelly. They did so by conveying to Jane Doe number 6 that they had maintained compromising photographs of her, which could be released at any time, and then releasing certain such photographs publicly via a Facebook page called Surviving Lies. And during interviews Russell conducted on YouTube, specifically following the filing of a civil lawsuit on behalf of Jane Doe number 6 against Kelly in November 2018. And we guys, you know, Jane Doe number 6 is Faith Rogers. In November 2018, the lawyer who filed the lawsuit for Faith Rogers received a typewritten letter signed by Kelly. Enclosed with the letter were portions of the civil complaint filed on behalf of Jane Doe number 6 with the following stamp affixed: "I do not accept this offer to contract and I do not consent to these proceedings." With Kelly's handwritten signature and a state of Illinois notary stamp and signature for Russell's mother, an individual whose identity is known to the government, and 2 pieces of paper that contained images and typewritten text. Among the images were text messages, exchanges between Kelly and Faith Rogers, as well as photographs of Faith Rogers that were apparently cropped to not disclose certain body parts, but which nonetheless included portions of her exposed buttocks and breasts. Beneath those photographs was text including, "I assure you this would not be considered a Sunday go-to meeting dress." The next 2 pictures have been cropped for the sake of not exposing her extremities to the world yet, as described further below in recorded statements live streamed over YouTube in late January 2019. Darrell Russell stated that he wrote the commentary that accompanied the photographs, that Kelly had signed the letter, and that he had participated in sending those documents to the lawyer. Notably, a judicially authorized search of Kelly's Apple iPhone seized at the time of his federal arrest revealed that on the morning of October 16, 2018, Kelly sent the photographs of Jane Doe number 6 and text message exchanges between Jane Doe number 6 and Kelly that were included in the November 2018 mailing to Darrell Russell's mother via MMS messages. Later that same day, Russell's mother sent a text message to Kelly that said, question, "Do you have a way of sending me one more picture showing her phone number at the top? I'm going to print it and include it along with the other 3 and include them in the letter to her attorney. Do you agree that she should really know her client?" And then the smiley or the winking smiley face or smirk wink, the smirk emoji. I'm tired, y'all. Forgive me. Kelly thereafter responded with a text message stating, "Enter Aaliyah, I'm going to get you more." United States postal records indicate that the mailing described above was sent by certified mail from Chicago, Illinois on November 20th, 2018 and received at the lawyer's address in Brooklyn, New York on November 26, 2018. United States Postal Service records for the certified mail return receipt associated with the mailing indicate that the destination address for the return receipt associated with the mailing indicate that the destination address for the return receipt was 219 North Justine Street, Chicago, Illinois, the address of a warehouse rented and used as a recording studio by Kelly at the time. In November and December 2018, Darrell Russell was in telephone and email communications with an individual whose identity is known to the government, who offered to work on Kelly's behalf, including as a behind-the-scenes publicist for Kelly. and that would be Cash Jones, right? Among other things, in early December 2018, Russell sent emails to the publicist, including, among other things, the same photographs of Faith Rogers described above. On December 4th, 2018, using the alias Don and the email address don@yahoo.com, Russell sent an email with the subject line, "The Survivors Exposed," to various individuals employed by A&E Networks, which owns Lifetime Entertainment Services. Lifetime produced a documentary series featuring various of Kelly's accusers entitled Surviving R. Kelly, which aired on the Lifetime TV network in early January 2019. And then they go in and start talking about the screening and when Don Russell, called in the threat. And so we know all those details. Then it talks about Faith and her mother traveled to New York City to attend the screening. The premiere was interrupted and police arrived and evacuated the theater. And so we know all this stuff that Don Russell has been accused of. I think what's new in this information about Don Russell is about the text message that allegedly Don Russell's mother sent to R. Kelly, and R. Kelly seemingly responded that he would send them another picture of Faith, but it doesn't indicate whether or not he knew what they were up to and what they were about to do. And so it goes on to talk about during the meeting, the publicist showed Jane Doe number 6 new photographs of Jane Doe number 6 and suggested that Kelly would release the photographs publicly if she continued to speak about Kelly. Jane Doe number 6 recognized the photographs as photographs that had been taken by Kelly during their relationship. On December 21st, 2018, wait, hold on guys, I have something clicked here. On December 21st, 2018, Russell sent a series of text messages to Faith and her mother, which included the text, "Just a sample, we will see criminal charges. You've been warned," followed by photographs of portions of the survivors' PDF, including the same photographs of Faith included in the November 2018 mailing to her lawyer. And then it says, thereafter, Russell sent Faith's mom text messages stating, "Publishing soon, and this is : my investigation will be done soon enough." On January 3rd, 2019, Russell sent another text message stating, "Pull the plug or you will be exposed." And then in the notes section, they talk about how they had records from Sprint Airlines that indicate that Cash Jones traveled from Florida to LaGuardia Airport with her cousin, Michael Williams, on the morning of December 4th, 2018. Now, y'all know Michael Williams is the one that's in jail now for setting that rent-a-car on fire that Angelo Clary had rented. So here these partners in crime once again traveling together. And it says, notably on August 11, 2020, Williams was arrested on a complaint charging him with witness intimidation and arson for setting fire to a car parked in the driveway of Jane Doe's residence at the time. Williams was subsequently indicted by a grand jury in the Eastern District of New York on the same charges and thereafter pleaded guilty to arson. During a search of the hotel room Williams was staying in at the time of his arrest, law enforcement agents recovered a loaded 9mm high-point handgun with an obliterated serial number in a black holster. On January 7, 2019, Don Russell, using Don alias, created a Facebook page called Surviving Lies, and we've already talked about this. Facebook deactivated the page the same day after posts targeting Faith and another of Kelly's accusers were posted on the page by Russell. And, let me say this about Don Russell. I came to this conclusion yesterday. And it's so interesting that all this came out. But you know the Facebook pages, Truth Media and Malicious Conspiracy. Do you guys know who is behind those pages? And I'm asking because I think that that's Don Russell and his mother that's behind those pages. Because I noticed that I think on Truth Media, there hasn't been any videos posted since last year. Remember, all of this went down in August of 2020 when Don was indicted. And so when it revealed that, he had been under investigation and that a sealed indictment was being unsealed against him. And so on Truth Media, they still post comments, but they don't do any videos. And like I said, it's been 10 months. And then on Malicious Conspiracy, the way that channel is set up and the way they do their videos and commentary in the community section is very similar to Truth Media. And so it just got me to thinking, you know what? Don Russell, was told to keep his butt off the internet, right, when he was arrested. And that was like 10 months ago. And so the dates seem to line up. And like, this is just my theory. I haven't proven this. I don't know this to be fact, but it just seems to me that now that we know how Don Russell and his mama was rolling, that they very well could have been behind those channels. And both of those channels were created in 2018. One was created, I think Malicious Conspiracy was created in March of 2018, and Truth Media was created in September of 2018, I believe it was. And I believe it was March or April 2018 when Surviving R. Kelly was commissioned, and they decided that they were going to go ahead and produce the show that was being presented to them. And that was Lifetime agreed to, not Lifetime, but the company that produced it, they gave the green light to move forward with it around March or April of 2018. So on January 25th, 2020, Russell appeared in a video live streamed on YouTube. During the interview, Russell introduced himself as Kelly's advisor, consultant, and friend, and indicated that he had known Kelly for more than 30 years, or going on 30 years now. Thereafter, during the interview, Russell discussed Jane Doe number 6 and the lawsuit she had filed, holding up copies of items that had been sent to Faith's lawyer, including the photographs of her as described above, while holding up one of the pages with photographs of her to the camera. Russell stated, "That's my commentary at the bottom." On January 26, 2020, Russell appeared in another video interview live streamed on YouTube. During the interview, Russell again held up copies of items that had been sent to Faith's lawyer, including the photograph of her described above. While holding up these items, Russell stated, they got that in parentheses, sent these documents to the lawyer. Russell further stated, "These are the pictures of her that we sent. These are the text messages of her that we sent." Referring to a document in the mailing, Russell stated that Kelly signed it. And I'm starting to think that Don, once again, is a part of this whole setup, and him and his mama might have been working for the feds as well. So, threats to Jane Doe number 19. In or about November 2018, Kelly summoned Jane Doe 19, a former girlfriend of Kelly whose identity is known to the government, to travel to Chicago. Once in Chicago, Kelly made her provide her driver's license to an assistant to photocopy and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, is this the LaToya girl? I think her name is LaToya. Kelly also told Jane Doe number 19 that she needed to decide which team she was on, Team Kells or the other one, and that she had a beautiful family and she did not want to be handled, a comment that she construed as a threat. Finally, that encounter Kelly had Jane Doe number 19 write a text message to Kelly containing falsehoods. Okay, so, bribery of Cook County clerk. So in February 2019, following the release, now y'all gonna love this one right here. Y'all gonna pass out when I read this one to y'all. So Bribery of Cook County Clerk in February 2019, following the release of the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries, the commencement of multiple investigations by law enforcement authorities, and the filing of criminal charges earlier that month in Cook County, Illinois, one then member of Kelly's inner circle, who billed himself as Kelly's crisis manager, told Kelly that he had two people who know a lot and told Kelly to, quote, figure out what you can do for them, suggesting these individuals were open to being bribed. In response, Kelly stated, "What you do, man, is write something on a piece of paper and give me what I should tip the bailiff, what I should tip the valet. Like when my uncle come up here and say, Rob, the valet guy, he parked the car over there. I say, so what should I give him? He say, well, $20, $30. I gave him $30. So what I'm saying is I don't know that number." Later in the same conversation, the crisis manager told Kelly that he had paid a clerk in Cook County $2,500 and procured a burner telephone for the clerk in order to obtain information about Kelly's legal trouble, stating, "That's done. You don't know nothing." Kelly responded, "Exactly." A recording of this conversation was recovered pursuant to a judicially authorized search of Kelly's phone. Okay, so how you recording conversations on the phone? Let me go back and read this again. So Kelly's crisis manager told Kelly that he had two people who know a lot, and he told Kelly, so Darrell Johnson said that he had two people who know a lot, and he told Kelly to figure out what you can do for them, suggesting these individuals were open to being bribed. In response, Kelly stated, "What you do, man, is write something on a piece of paper and give me what I should tip the bailiff, what I should tip the valet. Like when my uncle come up here and say, Rob, the valet guy, he parked the car over there. I say, so what should I give him? He say, well, $20, $30. I give him $30. So what I'm saying is I don't know what number." Later in the same conversation, the crisis manager told Kelly that he had paid a clerk in Cook County $2,500 and procured a burner telephone for the clerk in order to obtain information about Kelly's legal trouble, stating, "That's done. You don't know nothing." Kelly responded, "Exactly." Okay, so they must have been texting. And they would have had to have been blind, dumb, stupid, and crazy to be under investigation, about to be arrested or had just been arrested, and was actually still texting each other this bullshit. Is that what we're supposed to believe? Okay, all right. Okay, let's continue on. So it says, the existence of Kelly's prior criminal case in Cook County, Illinois. The government seeks to introduce limited evidence regarding the existence of Kelly's prior criminal case in Cook County, Illinois, in an attempt to influence the jury in that case. Specifically, in June 2002, Kelly was charged in Cook County, Illinois with CP offenses related to a videotape of a female engaged in activity. After multiple delays, jury selection began in or about May 2008. In or about May 2008, John Doe number 1, remember John Doe, alerted Kelly that he had access to a juror. Now, wait a minute. I thought John Doe number 1 was like 16 years old. So how he got access to a damn juror in this case? Oh my God, this is about to be a best-selling novel here, y'all. So it says, in or about 2008, John Doe number 1 alerted Kelly that he had access to a juror, and Kelly told John Doe number 1 to come to his residence. When John Doe number 1 came to his residence, he advised Kelly in front of Kelly's attorneys about the juror, and Kelly's attorneys advised against contacting the juror. Shortly thereafter, Kelly, outside the presence of his attorneys, specifically requested that John Doe number 1 make contact with the juror and tell the juror that Kelly was a good guy. The case ultimately went to trial in June of 2008, and Kelly was acquitted on all charges. Oh my God, I just can't keep reading this. This is just like a novel, this stuff they got in here. So the government seeks to introduce evidence of the existence and general nature of the case, including the nature of the charge, its duration, and Kelly's acquittal through a certified and redacted copy of the case summary docket sheet for the case, and limited testimony from witnesses to explain, provide context for, and situate testimony regarding other events and matters, including the information from John Doe number 1 described above, as well as Kelly and the Enterprise's use of certain protocols, including the timing, the collection of identification documents from victims and others in some instances, and the use of non-disclosure and settlement agreements. Q. Kelly's efforts to obtain CP. Jane Doe number 5 is expected, and once again, Jane Doe is Ariel Clary, is expected to testify that during the course of her relationship with Kelly, Kelly directed her to obtain CP involving boys for him. Okay, at Kelly's direction, Ariel searched the internet for porn. And screen recorded such porn for Kelly's use. Ariel believed the porn that she found on the internet and downloaded for Kelly actually involved individuals who were 18 or older, given the websites on which she found the videos. A judicially authorized search of digital media recovered from Kelly's residence corroborates Jane Doe's account. The following videos were recovered from the device. IMG_0002.mp4 video from twinksbear.com titled Amateur Bareback Twinks Effing Raw, which shows, oh my God, I can't even read what that video was about, but y'all get the gist of it, child. So actually it was 3 different videos, and so they were, the first video they said was created May 26, 2019. Okay, wait a minute. File information for the video on the device also indicates that the file was created. So on the device using app Redgo on May 26, 2019. Okay, May 26, 2019. Wasn't he already under arrest? So you mean to tell me that after he was arrested, he just randomly decided that he wanted Ariel to go find him some CP with some little boys? All of this, now she was with him for what, 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, or however many years she was with him. But after he was indicted in Cook County, he decided he needed Ariel to find this stuff for him, and that Ariel went and looked up this stuff on May 26, 2019. Wasn't he indicted by Cook County in February 2019, y'all? Like, am I missing something here? So the first one was May 26, 2019. And then they say in the video, the man exposes, thereafter touches, blah, blah. According to the file information for the video on the device, the file appears to have been created on the device on June 22nd, 2019. Then on the third video, showing a man on a sofa with a young male. Initially, the young male is fully clothed. And then, talk about them undressing. Eventually, the man exposes the buttocks, has the male, blah, blah, blah. And this one was created on June 12, 2019. The government has been unable to confirm the identity or ages of the individuals appearing in those videos. So basically what this tells me is that Ariel been in on the setup with her parents, or either her parents were the ones that came up with that device and told Ariel to give that device to the feds, because this right here makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So the government has been unable to confirm the identity. I already said that. Okay, so audio recordings of physical abuse and threats. Finally, the government seeks to introduce excerpts of 2 audio recordings recovered pursuant to a search warrant, both of which show the physical and psychological abuse Kelly employed to maintain control over women with whom he was engaged in relationships. Kelly's regular use of audio and video recording to maintain control. One video recording shows 2 women in a room laying in a bed and engaging in casual conversation. At some point in the recording, Kelly enters the room, accuses one of the women of lying, and begins to physically assault the woman. Notably, the video appears to have been taken by a stationary camera mounted somewhere in the room. In the other recording, Kelly berates, threatens, and physically assaults Jane Doe number 20. Lord Jesus, these Jane Does keep growing. A woman whose identity is known to the government, who commenced a relationship with Kelly when she was 18 and who Kelly believes stole from him. There's only one way you're going to get rid of this. For me to trust your ass again, you're going to do the F I tell you to do. When you made the effing tape for me and I looked at that shit, you was hiding your effing face all over that shit because you didn't. I want to be seen. That don't even make no sense. Because you didn't want to be seen. I told you to effing trust me, and here it is. I can't effing trust you. You're the one who's effing untrustworthy. I'm a loyal man. Shut the F up. You're gonna do that shit for me for the effing free. That don't make no sense. And you ain't gonna hide your effing face on me. You're gonna do what the F I tell you to do, and you're gonna do it effing right. Then I'm going to gain my effing trust back with your ass. If I even detect you trying to hide on that shit, I'm going to blow this shit the fuck up. Okay. Do you hear this shit? I'm telling you, I effing raised your ass. I raised you. You effing murdered. What? Then it had, I guess, unaudible or something. Effing murdered for doing shit like this. So somebody, I guess, I don't know. Shut up. Shut the F up. You're gonna do this shit effing right. You're gonna gain my effing trust because you effing owe me that. You hear me? You effing understand me. You're gonna do what the F I tell you to do to gain my mother effing trust. You better not ever in my mother effing life take from me again, or I will be in Florida and something will happen to you. You understand what I'm telling you? Oh my God, it's a whole script. Now you go to that effing garage. You chill there until you hear from me. You understand me? You take your effing phone. You don't call. This sounds like a new version of Trapped in the Closet, y'all. You don't call no mother effing body, and I will know if you did. You can go in the closet. You can go wherever you want to go, but I'm gonna know if you did. Okay, was they not saying nothing while he was going through this whole dialogue they got here? You come over here for something to eat, or you call to me, and that's the effort. Child, until I tell you can go back in that room. Okay, do you hear me? Go to the garage, write the F now. When I come and get you this time, you better be effing like you're supposed to be effing. Okay, say fucking like you're supposed to be fucking, I guess, child. And you know you held back on that tape now, don't you? You're not going to do that no more. You bet the F not. Go to effing garage. Hear me? You're not going to tape until I tell you. When I tell you, I don't give a F if you're coming out of your sleep. You better be effing ready. Do you understand? I better feel like you asked me to do. You make no effing calls except the studio or me. Now, obviously they was engaging in something at the camera. Who camera was this on that was set stationary to record this whole conversation? Like, was this Ariel setting up a scene and he was recording? Was this role playing? Like, what exactly was going on in that scene? Because, child, by the time he got to sentence 3 or 4, I would have been and got up and put my clothes on and went home and been like, F you, okay? So it says, during the recording transcribed in part above, Kelly is overheard physically assaulting Jane Doe number 20, who Kelly claims he raised after he accuses her and she admits stealing from him. Or is this, okay, I thought the person 17 or 18 was Dominique, but now this sounds like Dominique. Child, I can't keep up. Also on the recording, he expressly threatened her that he would be in Florida and something would happen to her if she stole from him again. Okay, so that can't be Dominique because Dominique is from Chicago. Again, and commented that people get murdered for doing what she did. Finally, Kelly is overheard directing the woman to go in the closet and to go to the garage and stay there until he gives her further instructions and instructing her that she would need to re-record something in his direction. Sounds like the latest installment, The Trapped in the Closet, for me, y'all. So then it goes on to the argument. The government moves in limine for the admission of evidence pertaining to the acts set forth above. First, the evidence of these acts is... Okay, hold on a second. My battery is dying. Whew, child, I needed that break. Okay, so I got my stuff all plugged in and everything. So let's start back with the argument. The government moves in limine for the admission of evidence pertaining to the acts set forth above. First, the evidence... Okay, sorry about that. First, the evidence of these acts is admissible as direct evidence of the charged racketeering offense. Second, evidence of many of these other acts is directly relevant to and inextricably intertwined with the evidence of the charged crimes. So why didn't you charge him for these crimes? In the alternative, evidence of the defendant's bad acts is also admissible under Rules 404B and 413 of the Federal Rules of Evidence. 1. Evidence other acts is admissible to establish the racketeering enterprise and its means and methods. Legal standard: a racketeering offense is not simply the commission of 2 or more predicate acts because, as the Second Circuit has explained, it is neither the enterprise standing alone nor the pattern of racketeering activity by itself which RICO criminalizes, but rather the combination of these 2 elements. And then it gives United States versus Pizzonia. In addition, it is well settled that to demonstrate a pattern of racketeering, in the end, it is not the number of predicates proved, but rather the relationship that they bear to each other or to some external organizing principle that indicates whether they manifest the continuity required to prove a pattern. Emphasis added, citation and internal quotation marks admitted. Put another way, a RICO pattern may not be established without some showing that the racketeering acts are interrelated and that there is continuity of a threat of continuity. Racketeering acts that are not widely separated in time or space may nonetheless, given other evidence of the threat of continuity, constitutes a RICO pattern. As a result, the Second Circuit has repeatedly held that evidence of other or uncharged crimes is admissible to establish the existence of the enterprise and its means and methods. So basically what they're saying here is they ain't got enough evidence to prove this case on its own with the people that they are claiming are victims. So they need to go out and find a whole bunch of other people with fantastical stories to tell, and then get those people to come into the courtroom and tell these stories to the jury, so that the jury will believe that this lack of evidence that they have in the actual charges is somehow factual, and that they should, look at these other patterns in these stories that people are telling to add credibility to their Jane Does in the case. So that's basically what they're saying. So as a result, the Second Circuit has repeatedly held that the evidence of other or uncharged crimes is admissible to establish the existence of the enterprise and its means and methods. For example, United States versus Baez, the Second Circuit held it is well settled that in prosecutions for racketeering offenses, the government may introduce evidence of uncharged offenses to establish the existence of the criminal enterprise, upholding district court's admission of 16 uncharged robberies. Moreover, crimes committed in furtherance of the racketeering enterprise, even where not alleged as racketeering acts, do not fall within the ambit of Rule 404, see United States versus Corio. Continuity established where a corrupt attorney's bribe of public officials and money laundering spanning approximately 4 months was part of a long-term drug enterprise that engaged in other unlawful activities that was likely to continue absent outside intervention. So y'all gonna turn a man's sex life into alleged sex life into a racketeering charge. Like, okay. Whatever. B. Analysis. First, as described below, each of the above described uncharged acts are integral to proving the existence and nature of the enterprise charged in the case. Specifically, such evidence is admissible as proof of, inter alia, the activities, purpose, and means of the enterprise, the defendant's role in the enterprise, and proof that the alleged predicate racketeering acts constitute a pattern of racketeering activity. The other acts evidence the government seeks to admit: Kelly's sexual abuse of minors, Kelly's use of physical harm and threats of physical harm on his victims, the unlawful imprisonment the unlawful imprisonment of women, the use of extortionate and coercive tactics to exert and maintain control over his victims and employees, and bribery. All are evidence of the existence of the enterprise, its purposes, means, and methods, the pattern of racketeering, and specifically the relatedness of the racketeering acts and the threat of their continuity. For example, Kelly's abuse of Jane Doe number 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, and John Doe number 1, all at the time of the abuse and attempted abuse began, is evidence that this abuse of Jane Doe number 2, number 4, and number 5 were not isolated events and were part of a larger pattern. Kelly's direction of Jane Doe 5 to obtain CP for his use also demonstrates Kelly's motive and intent with respect to the charged victims, Jane Doe number 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, and John Doe number 1, as well as his control over Jane Doe number 5. Tactics to unlawfully imprison women and girls to ensure their availability for Kelly at Kelly's demand, such as the uncharged act involving Jane Doe number 14 and the alleged racketeering act involving Jane Doe number 3, are evidence of the enterprise itself and its means and methods. Similarly, Kelly's physical and psychological abuse of Jane Doe number 16 and 17 and 18 and 20, and threats towards employee number 1 and Jane Doe 19 and 20, you already said 20, all tend to show that the similar abuse of Jane Doe number 4, number 5, and number 6 was part of an overarching pattern employed by Kelly and members of the enterprise Along with the threats to expose embarrassing photographs of Jane Doe number 6, it is also evidence of the means and methods of the enterprise. That is, the use of physical assaults and threats of physical, psychological, and reputational harm, including coercion, extortion, and blackmail, in an attempt to obtain total control over both victims and employees and ensure, or alleged victims and employees, and ensure their strict adherence to Kelly's demands and to maintain and promote Kelly's stature in the music industry. Child, I don't see nothing that none of these people did to help promote his stature in the music industry and the continued operation of the enterprise. The threats against Jane Doe number 6, also an example of the enterprise's use of porn, facilitated and created by the enterprise, the creation of which is one of the charged purposes of the enterprise to coerce and blackmail victims and others, and not simply for his gratification, given that multiple witnesses will testify regarding Kelly's filming of them in the nude and while engaged in encounters, as well as other compromising and embarrassing situations at his direction. The existence of such videos within the defendant's possession and under his control resulted in an ever-present fear and threat that such compromising material could be disseminated to others or more broadly released, like the notes and letters containing embarrassing information, including falsehoods that the defendant directed many of his victims to write. Alleged victims to write. The defendant's creation and retention of such material allowed for its use to control, coerce, extort, and blackmail alleged people, including as a means to ensure their silence. Similarly, payments to women in exchange for their silence was also part of the means and methods. As described above, Kelly and members of his inner circle negotiated financial settlements with multiple women, including Jane Doe number 4, 10, 11, 12, 15, in exchange for their silence, thereby helping to ensure the continued existence of the enterprise. Finally, evidence of the discussion between the defendant and the crisis manager regarding bribery is probative of the required continuity component and tends to show the horizontal relatedness of the bribery charged in Racketeering Act 1. And then they go United States versus Elkins. The requisite continuity may be established against the defendant through evidence of uncharged crimes by other members of the enterprise not charged in the indictment. 2. Certain evidence of other acts is directly relevant to and inextricably intertwined with the evidence of the charged crimes. A. Legal standard. It is well settled that evidence of uncharged criminal activity is not considered other crimes evidence under Federal Rule Evidence 404B if it arose out of the same transaction or series of transactions as the charged offense, if it is inextricably intertwined with the evidence regarding the charged offense, or if it is necessary to complete the story of the crime on trial. The Second Circuit has repeatedly upheld the admission of uncharged act evidence as direct evidence of the charged crimes where such evidence provides necessary background or context of the charged crime. So basically, in all of this, where they're citing these case laws, they are basically confirming they don't have a strong enough case, so they had to go out and get these other stories, and now they want the judge to allow them to enter all these other people and allow these people to come into the courtroom before the jury during this trial and tell these stories that they never called the police about, that there's no police record, that is basically hearsay. You know, just like with the Bill Cosby case, where you had all these people coming forward saying he did this, he did this, he did this, but there was no actual proof that he had actually did any of those things. And so that goes on for a couple of pages. Then it says B, analysis. Evidence of certain of the other acts described above are so intricately intertwined that they are necessary to complete the story of the crime on trial. First, evidence regarding Kelly's illegal relationship with Jane Doe number 1, a minor he believed he had impregnated, is necessary to establish his motive, intent, and plan, among other things, for engaging in the bribery conduct charged in Racketeering Act number 1. Now, what is further stupid about this whole Aaliyah charge is that even if he allegedly married her in the hopes that she couldn't testify against him, which is stupid because you're talking about a minor who doesn't have the right, you know what I'm saying, to make such a decision. And furthermore, if he was doing it because he thought she was pregnant, then the crime had already been committed before the marriage. So him marrying her would not have prevented them from prosecuting him if he had actually gotten her pregnant, because then they could have charged him, with having sex with her, with impregnating her. And then what happened to that pregnancy? Are they going to tell us that he went and have an abortion? What happened to the pregnancy that was taking place? Like, this is just so stupid. This is so stupid. But anyway, Jane Doe number 9's testimony that she advised him that she had contracted herpes from him, and Jane Doe number 11 and Jane Doe 12 lawsuits against him as a result of their contention that he exposed them to herpes, all constitute evidence. Not necessarily, because a person signing agreeing to a settlement, if he even knew about the settlements, because for all we know, his attorney, who's the guy, the Darrell McDavid guy, could have been entering these settlements and just telling him sign, and he didn't know what he was signing. That's number one. And number two, it is not uncommon. It happens all the time. It is easier to write a person a check and tell them to shut up and get on down the road. It does not prove that he had done anything. And my understanding is that in all of the non-disclosure agreements with the settlements, he never admits to any of the things that they are charging him with. So then we go down. Basically, they're talking about all these STDs and physical assaults on Jane Doe 16, Jane Doe 17, Jane Doe 18. Okay, so it says, additionally, Jane Doe number 5, here we go, Ariel again with her fantastical stories, heard and saw Kelly inflict physical assaults on Jane Doe 16 and 17 and Jane Doe 18, and evidence of such assaults therefore helps to explain in part how the defendant maintained control over Jane Doe number 5. But, I hope they enter precedence into the evidence where Jane Doe number 5 wasn't being controlled by nobody. Mouth Almighty probably had everybody in that house terrorized. Similarly, Kelly's and other Enterprise members' efforts to threaten Jane Doe number 6 and her mother with the exposure. So they basically reiterating Faith's story. Limited evidence regarding the existence of Kelly's prior Cook County criminal case, the nature of the charged crimes, the case's duration, and his ultimate acquittal after trial is also inextricably intertwined with evidence of the charges, crimes, and evidence regarding the existence and evolving means and methods of the enterprise. For example, the government expects that certain witnesses will testify about changes in the protocols used by certain employees in an effort to protect the enterprise following the initiation of the prior criminal case and during its lengthy pendency. It is also inextricably intertwined with Kelly. Sorry about that, I had to clear my throat. Intertwined with Kelly and other members of the enterprise's use of certain methods, including the collection of identification documents and the use of non-disclosure agreements and settlement agreements, as well as threats, coercion, and extortion to prevent women from reporting his conduct to law enforcement, whatever. Additionally, evidence related to the facts underlying the charge, including the fact that a video of the defendant engaging in activity was widely and publicly disseminated, is relevant to the defendant's knowledge and intent with respect to the charged crimes to show that the defendant understood the consequences of his actions when he filmed them, including Jane Doe number 4 and Jane Doe number 5, i.e. that such videos could be disseminated. But do y'all have the videos? That's what I want to know. In addition, the nature of the charges is relevant. They're basically just repeating what they're saying, talking about letters containing the falsehoods that they claim he made them write. The nature of the charges and the fact that the defendant's acquittal are also necessary background. The failure to report is common theme among alleged victims, but they don't have any trouble going to an attorney and collecting a paycheck. Okay, and then the defendant is a prominent public figure with an active fan base. Indeed, a victim's failure to report will likely be raised by the defendant during cross-examination in support of an argument that the victim's testimony with respect to Kelly's conduct is fabricated. But the failure to report and instead seek a civil settlement or simply to remain silent is readily explained by the fact that the defendant was once charged with exploiting. There was a video widely believed to feature the defendant with the person, and the jury acquitted him. Thus, the 2008 charges and the acquittal are necessary. The problem is most of these people y'all talking about was before the case even went to trial, so they can't say that they were intimidated by the fact that he was acquitted in the court. For all these folks y'all talking about from the mid 1990s, the early 1990s, and all of that, because that should have already been reported. So it says, thus the 2008 charges and the acquittal are necessary background to help explain why some victims opted against reporting his conduct. No, they didn't report because they were getting money. They were living the lifestyle that they wanted to until they no longer could do that. Nor is the probative value substantially outweighed by the risk of unfair prejudice, given that he is charged with the same type of charges here and the fact of his acquittal in Cook County. Okay, then number 3, evidence of the defendant's other acts is also admissible pursuant to Federal Rule 404B. In the alternative, the government seeks to admit evidence of the other acts described above pursuant to Federal Rule of Evidence 405B. A legal standard, evidence of uncharged crimes or acts may also be admitted pursuant to Rule 404 for permissible purposes, including to prove motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, or absence of mistake of accident. Evidence is only admissible if Rule 403, the probative value of the evidence, is not substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice or by considerations of judicial economy, such as the needless presentation of cumulative evidence. The Second Circuit has established a 3-pronged test for the admission of other crimes, and I already read that to you guys earlier in this video when I first started. So it says, while the government must explain in detail the purposes for which the evidence is sought to be admitted, and that's from United States versus Levi, is the 404B rule of broad reach and liberal application. We have adopted the inclusionary or positive approach to 404B. As long as the evidence is not to offset propensity, it is admissible. To the extent that evidence of an uncharged crime is offered to prove knowledge of intent or the state of mind, the law requires that the other act and the charged conduct be sufficiently similar to the conduct at issue to permit the jury reasonably to draw from the act the knowledge or intent inference advocated by the proponent of the evidence, else it would not be relevant. Prior arrests with small amount of cocaine-based street-level distribution sufficiently similar to prove knowledge and intent for charged crime of possession of large amount of powder cocaine in residence. So they're basically talking about another case and giving that as an example. And it says, finally, additional basis for admitting other acts evidence under Rule 404 include corroborating crucial prosecution testimony if the corroboration is direct and the matter corroborated is significant. Internal quotation marks admitted, and where cross-examination into a government witness bad acts for impeachment purposes is anticipated, allowing the government to elicit the witness testimony about such acts on direct examination so as to avoid the appearance that the government is concealing such purported impeachment evidence from the jury. And that was United States versus Guerrero. Here, the government offers evidence of the defendant's participation in uncharged acts, not to show propensity, but rather, as explained below, as evidence of the defense's knowledge, intent, common scheme, or plan, as well as his modus operandi. B, analysis. They're basically repeating stuff over and over. Let's see, the second set affirmed the defendants. So they're talking about another case. So I'm not going to go into that. United States versus Lawson. The defendant has similar methods of enticing his victims. Among other methods, sporting equipment and alcohol, because such evidence demonstrated a common scheme of plan. Similarly, here the defendant used two separate common schemes to recruit his alleged victims. Sometimes he relied upon a member of his inner circle to select the person, such as how he identified Jane Doe number 9, 13. No, that's not how he got Jane Doe number 5. Jane Doe number 5 went to that concert with a plan. Okay, she had a plan of action that she was going to be chosen, and I'm sure all these other people knew that if they were to get up in front of that stage, that he brings people up on the stage, and so they made sure they were there. And when it was time to bring people up on the stage, they, started waving and carrying on so that they would be the one. I have been to many concerts where people are brought up on the stage to sing, people are brought up on the stage to dance, to compete, all type of stuff. And you know that if you are the loudest, the one closest to the stage, that they are going to choose you. So that's not racketeering. So other times the defendant lured people to his orbit by promising to mentor them in the music world, such as how he lured Jane Doe number 1 and number 5. Now, I don't think he lured Jane Doe number 1, Aaliyah, by promising to mentor her in the music world. I thought her uncle brought her to him, because they wanted him to mentor. And isn't that the same thing with Ariel? Her parents wanted him to mentor her. He didn't go seeking her to mentor her because he didn't even know who she was. Like she was an ant in this building a mound in the sand. At that point, she was just one of many people that was in the audience at this concert. And so it goes on, basically trying to build this story. The evidence, along with the evidence regarding Kelly's direction to Ariel to obtain the CP for his use and the nature of his prior criminal case in Cook County, Illinois, is also admissible to prove the defendant's motive to carry out the alleged crimes and his knowledge and intent. In doing so, all permissible uses of other acts evidence. C, probative value of the other crimes evidence far outweighs any prejudicial effect. It says, finally, the probative value, blah, 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 evidence of other crimes is admissible when offered for a proper purpose through various types of evidence, including witness testimony, so long as the evidence does not involve conduct any more sensational or disturbing than the crime with which the defendant has been charged. Where the uncharged crimes are similar in nature to the charged crimes, evidence is admissible under the Rule 403. I lost my place, guys. I got to go back up, find out where I was at. Balancing test. And then, they basically try to break down upholding admissibility of evidence that the defendant, a police officer charged with engaging in excessive use of force with an arrestee, choked another arrestee on the basis that the evidence did not involve conduct more inflammatory than the charged crime, and the district court gave a careful limiting instruction, blah, blah, blah. As noted above, the evidence relating to the other criminal acts listed above would come primarily from the testimony of alleged victim witnesses and with respect to the threats against faith documentary evidence. Accordingly, the quality of the evidence is no more prejudicial than that offered with regard to the other charged crimes. More importantly, the uncharged criminal acts are either similar in nature or less sensational than the charged crimes. In any event, any potential prejudice to the defendant can be effectively mitigated by a cautionary instruction limiting the jury's consideration of the evidence to the purposes which it is offered. 4. Evidence of the defendant's sexual assault of other victims is also admissible. In a assault case, the admissibility of evidence of a prior assault offense is governed by Rule 413. The rule provides that in a criminal case in which a defendant is accused of an assault, the court may admit evidence that the defendant committed any other assault. The evidence may be considered or any matter to which it is relevant. Then they talk about some case where somebody was killed. I'm not reading that. Rule 413 stands as an exception to the general rule barring the admission of evidence for the purpose of showing a defendant's propensity to commit bad acts. Okay, they're basically repeating what they're saying. I'm not going to keep reading all that. Okay, designate supersede in offense cases the restrictive aspects of federal rule of evidence, and to create a presumption that evidence admissible pursuant to the proposed rules is typically relevant and probative, and that its probative value is normally not outweighed by any risk of prejudice or other adverse effects. Evidence of defendants prior, so is admissible. So they're just like talking about all these other cases, trying to support why they think that they should be able to have this evidence entered. Okay, the defendant is charged with SA. Kelly is currently charged with multiple types of assault. First, racketeering Act 4 and count 1 of the indictment. So they're going over that again, talking about faith. 2, evidence of other assaults are admissible under Rule 413. So they're basically going to try and compare some of these other stories to Faith's story. And then they explain why they think that they should be allowed to do that. And then 5, the victims identified in the other acts evidence described above should be permitted to testify using and be referred to by their first name only or pseudonyms at trial. So here we go with that nonsense again. For the reasons stated in its first motion in Limine, filed on July 10th, and you guys know I went over that with you, where they want these people to remain anonymous or only use their first name or use fake names. And then they go on to talk about why, about supporters, need for relocation or loss of employment. And then the conclusion was, For the reasons set forth above, the government's motion in limine should be granted. Now, what I can tell you is that with the Bill Cosby case, there were several people that they were trying to get in there, but the judge set a limit, said only 5 people can come in and testify as bad act witnesses. And so then the prosecution had to go through all these people who was coming up with these fantastical stories and have those determine which 5 were the best 5 to put up there on the witness stand. And then, as you guys know, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturned Bill Cosby's conviction because they basically said that the prosecution didn't have a case and they had to rely on bringing in these people telling these unfounded stories in order to get the jury to convict Bill Cosby. And then also the main reason was because the prosecutors that he did that deposition with had promised him that he would not be prosecuted. And so he was able to get his case overturned. So you would think that they would tread lightly with these, these bad acts witnesses that they're trying to bring in. So guys, this is going to bring to a close part 2. And so there is another document that's very similar to this document that shouldn't take a lot of time, but I think it lists the different evidence that they claim that they have against him. And so we will go through that in part 3. So go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.